I read this book about a month ago about something I'm quite fond of, which is sports betting. And I thought, man, I would love to get the guy on this podcast to talk about some of the general best practices and pitfalls of sports betting, especially with NFL and college football right around the corner. The book is titled Smart Sports Betting, and the author is Matt Rudnitsky. He joins me right now. Matt, thanks for taking the time to do this. And more than anything, thanks for writing the book because it helped me get in the right headspace prior to this upcoming football season.
Thank you, Brandon. I'm thrilled to be here. And appreciate that you enjoyed the book.
So you dive pretty deep into your history of sports betting and how you turned $100 from your grandmother into over $7K and how that money then disappeared because that's how sports betting goes sometimes when you don't have your head screwed on straight. So clearly that was the inspiration behind writing this book. But why did you feel like people needed to hear this sort of message about betting smart, but understanding that you're probably not going to be a professional? I noticed a big theme in your book was just cutting through the BS of understand who you are, understand what sports betting is really all about. So why did you feel like you wanted to share this message with people who partake in this wild world?
Yeah. I feel like I have a pretty common story up to the point of that. Oh, wait, I think I might actually be good at this. And then I kind of flushed all the money down the toilet and turned out I wasn't that good, which is that I've always been a big sports fan, diehard sports fan. I was filling out, scorecards at baseball games and reading the back of baseball cards and all that stuff, like super stats nerd. I was even good at math and all these things. So I just assumed naturally, when I discovered sports betting, I'm going to be pretty good at this, right? I don't know, maybe I won't be a millionaire, but I'm going to make some money, right? I know what I'm talking about. That's what most people think who are diehard sports fans, whether they are good at math, whether they're not good at math. They just think I know more than my friends. So therefore I'm going to make money. I have a lot of friends like that, and I'm like that too. And I had the both fortune and misfortune of realizing how not true that is and how hard sports betting is. And I just see all my friends and friends of friends and stuff like that think, if I know a lot about sports, I'm going to make a lot of money. And I get why they think that. I thought that too, but it's just super important to realize you get yourself in a lot of trouble if you think that, a lot of trouble.
Yes. Yeah. And I want to discuss exactly why we find ourselves in this sort of world of hurt. But I guess from the core of it all, have you discovered your own theories psychologically of why we as sports fans, now not all sports fans bet, but for sports fans that get into sports betting, why not just sit back and watch the games when at the end of the day, 99% of us are going to either lose money, break even, or barely churn a profit? So why do we even bother? And this is not coming from somebody who's anti. This is somebody who is an advocate for sports betting. But I do wonder sometimes why do we even do this?
Yeah, it's a great question. I haven't thought about it too much, but now that you ask it, I think it's really just that competitiveness that most sports fans have. And I don't think it's all that different than people who are super into politics or something else. It's just the difference is sports betting and also fantasy sports and stuff are way more accessible than maybe betting on political things or fashion or whatever, movies, whatever your interest is. So the combination of the competitiveness of sports fans. And I think really going back to what I was saying of most sports fans have a group of friends that they watch sports with. And there's whatever, it's a group of 10 friends. There's two of them who really do know more than the other ones, right? I was the diehard fan. I'm oh, you don't know where that guy went to college, or you don't know that his on-base percentage is better or whatever. And in that group, it's if I was betting them, I'd actually make money. So I kind of see that I'm smarter than them in a way. And therefore it must be the case that oh, I'm smarter than everyone who watches sports. But the difference is, of course, that I'm competing in sports betting against people with algorithms and huge teams and all these crazy things and the sports book and all of that stuff. So I think to answer your question, it's getting a little bit of that taste of ooh, I was right versus my friend. So therefore I'm going to be right in the market. And you just quickly realize it's complete nonsense, but then you're hooked and you probably won a couple of times and you're it was just bad luck. So I might as well keep going. You win once and you're hooked.
Well, exactly. Yeah. That's definitely the case. And I think that's part of the reason why a lot of these sports books operate with, hey, let's give you free money to start. And then even if you lose, we'll give you a bonus bet back. Because they want you to get that thrill of that first win, that confidence that comes with it. And then I guess in some ways, and I'm not trying to turn this into some version of call the number addiction to sports betting podcast, but they want to get you hooked on that thrill of that first win. And it does seem like at least a lot of them, I shouldn't even say some, there's a lot of predatory sort of promotion when it comes to sports betting. And I think that's where some of the negative stigma may come from, because they want people to get hooked on their products. Do you see the same thing?
Yeah, 100%. And like quick, funny, it's not really a funny story. It's actually kind of a sad story, but makes me chuckle a little bit. When I was writing the
laugh
book,
at the sadness of life.
When I was writing the book, like one of the quick sections is about like kind of how to spot a good sports book. And I recommend a couple of them that I think are, we'll say, less predatory than others. They're still somewhat predatory because they all are. So I looked into doing like some sort of affiliate thing where basically, okay, I'm recommending the sports book. You sign up and I get some sort of, cut of how much you bet or win or whatever. And I very quickly found out that there's no like set amount per person. It's not based on how much you win. It's not even based on how much you bet, but basically they would give me a percentage for how much the person loses. And I was just like, oh man, I can't write this book about like how to not lose money sports betting and then profit on people losing money. So I wound up not including any affiliate links, but I think the examples of the sign up bonuses and like these affiliate programs where you're literally making money on people's losses, like kind of tell you all you need to know of like, I don't even necessarily blame the companies. Like that's just kind of how they make money. But like literally their business model is you lose money and they get a cut of it. And potentially they'll give me a cut of it, which again, I did not do, but I had the option.
So first of all, it shows your level of integrity. And I think even more of a reason why people should go out and read the book, because you cut through the BS. You're a non-BS guy. You can tell in the way that you write it. It's a very easy read. It's actually, I think, the quickest I have ever read a book. I'm not much of a reader, so a credit to you for that. But I'm partnered with Hard Rock Bet. I'm partnered with a couple of different sports betting sites. So when I say this, I think it's just the nature of the business. I'm not trying to take anybody down, but one of the things that I've noticed that I will actually fade some of their promotions, and I hope that they never hear this. But so I'll get like a notification from Hard Rock in Florida. That's the only legal sports book, and it'll say, "Hey, we're giving you beneficial odds for, say it's the Braves, where anywhere else it's plus 100 for them to win. Hey, they're going to give you plus 130." And so that's the notification they're sending you. To me, all that says is they're getting so much money on the other side. They need people to start betting the Braves, and I'll come in on the other side of the promotion. Is that the sort of thinking that you kind of have to have when you step into this world of, when you see these companies start to angle you in a certain way towards parlays, towards certain bets, that you should kind of just zig while they're trying to get you to zag?
I would say in general, yes. Sometimes with things like that, like there occasionally is kind of the like too good to be true of like whatever the again, like kind of your example of you're getting like an extra 30 cents on the Braves, and you need to compare that to like another site and see if they're just lying about their odds. But occasionally they will do that, and it's a good deal. Usually they'll only let you bet $20, $50, something like that. But in general, you're right. Like the more common one is with like the same game parlays and stuff, where they'll give you like the featured parlay and stuff like that. It's like, yeah, if Steph Curry makes whatever 6 threes and scores over 30 points and blocks 42 shots or whatever like nonsense that they're doing. And typically, yeah, if they're like making the pick for you, again, there could be the occasional exception, but like usually it's a bad deal.
So I love how much you focus on the importance of tracking your bets, and that if you don't pay attention to your pitfalls, what you're successful with, what you're not, are you good at props? Are you good at totals? Are you good with certain teams? And I think that's invaluable advice. I've been tracking my bets for probably the last 5 years. I'm up over $700, which I'm quite proud of. Yep. It's good. But when you consider I've been tracking my bets for 5 years and I bet almost every single day, it's pennies. Mm-hmm. How should sports bettors judge? I'm not asking you to specifically judge my total, just using that as a lead in here. How should sports bettors judge what success actually is? Where you can look and say, I'm not completely wasting my time with this?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think your example is really good of, to me, and like this is kind of how I end the book, of basically like this is where I stop, of like I see myself as like a, I don't know, we'll say professional amateur, right? Like I take sports betting pretty seriously. I do really look into the numbers, stuff like that. But even me, like knowing a bunch of stuff, writing a book, having kind of like a mathy brain and stuff, I do not expect to make any money. I have made some money, but like in general, I purely treat it as just like entertainment where the upside is I might win money. And to me, it's literally just like whatever I'm betting, I need to be okay with losing. So whether that's $1 a day, $10,000 a year, it doesn't matter if it's a large number or a low number, whatever I'm personally comfortable with. To me, as long as I don't lose the number more than the number I'm comfortable losing, it's a win, right? Because I do this for entertainment. And even if I do lose a lot of money, I'm going to win a bunch of times. I'm probably going to have some ups where I'm up a bunch of money and I feel really good about myself. And then, yes, I'm going to have the opposite where I feel like crap. But ultimately, to me, like you really just need to be like, what money am I comfortable losing? Ideally, I lose less than that or I make money. But as long as I don't go beyond that, like I signed up for this, I know what I got into, and I'm okay. And that's a win.
Where do you land on the idea of a bankroll? Where I have a hard time with this because I like the general concept of it, but I'm also betting all year. I think a bankroll makes more sense if you're an NFL college football bettor. You start your bankroll at the start of the season, and what you end with, you cash out, and then you start over again the next year. But I'm betting. I think a lot of people are all year long. So, what's your mindset on the bankroll?
Yeah, it's a hard one because you're right. Like if the traditional advice makes a lot of sense for a professional of like, if you're a professional, you really kind of need a bankroll and to bet some sort of percentage of it. Like technically that's what you need if you're casual too. But like you said, it's just like kind of hard to conceptualize. So I think again, the most important thing is just like, what am I comfortable losing? And you could do it for the whole year, or you could do it for the NFL season, or you could do it for this month or whatever. Like it also depends, like, does your income fluctuate? Do you have a steady income? But just like, what am I okay with losing? And to me, that's my bankroll. And then it's just a question of like, it just really depends on your lifestyle, your level of risk of stuff like that, where the traditional advice would be, you know, bet between 0.5% and 2% of your bankroll. But like, if you're pretty casual, you might have like a much lower number that you're comfortable losing. And then it's like, what am I going to bet like $1 a game? Like that's super boring. So you're like, it's okay to bet more than that. Just like understand, I don't know, let's say you're okay with losing $1,000 during NFL and you want to bet $100 a game. Like that's totally fine that you're going like above the traditional advice, but also just realize like it's a pretty decent chance like you're going to lose 10 bets in a row, or you're going to lose 10 units over 3 weeks. And then like you have no money. And are you okay with losing an extra 500 or 1,000? Again, it's just like totally up to you. So just understand if you're betting more than that, like 1% or whatever per game, there's a higher risk of you losing all your money. And if you're okay with that, that's no big deal. And you might get more excitement, but just like be aware.
Yeah, I was building up a nice little bankroll, and then it was time to go on a Disney vacation with the family, and I'm like, well, I guess I kind of need some of this money, and then it blows the whole idea of a bankroll. But you know, again, I'm not a professional, so you kind of have to come to terms with that. Do you feel like writing this book made you a better sports bettor? That what you wound up once you finished, you went, well, this actually, I hope it benefits other people. It actually benefited me quite a bit.
It did. It definitely helped. It just kind of helped me like take what I had learned seriously. It's the same exact idea as like tracking your bets of just like, you like kind of sort of know these things in your head, but until you like literally see it on paper, it's very easy to delude yourself. And I think the act of like actually writing it down and thinking through things, and like you write the first version of the chapter and you're like, oh yeah, I totally understand this concept. And then you're like, wait, this makes no sense at all. It does really help you clarify your thinking and take your ideas more seriously in the same way that tracking your bets does. Makes it harder to delude yourself.
yeah, because I wrote this, so you kind of have to. It becomes a Bible for you. It becomes advice
to
for other people
to some degree. I mean, don't get me wrong. I still delude myself. I still don't follow my own advice, but I do it less than I did before.
The football season's around the corner, and the thing that is so unique about football is that you get to stew on these numbers if you want to for a week. And I know that the conventional wisdom is that you want to get ahead of these numbers. That's what sharp bettors do. I'm going to bet the line when it comes out at the start of the week rather than waiting until Sunday when there's a trillion different shows and everybody's shared their picks and everything just becomes this big homogenous sort of thought that's traveling through the sports world. But is there actually an advantage in waiting right before kickoff and watching line movement? Because a lot of the people that are listening to this right now, you could bet when the line comes out, but you probably don't even know what you're betting into.
Yeah, it's a good point, because there is a lot of truth in basically like the real reason why betting early is theoretically better is that like the big bettors haven't bet yet, so the market doesn't have the information of people who are like doing this professionally. But there is kind of an in between of like, well, if you're a casual bettor, you haven't taken time to study the matchup, you haven't listened to the podcast you listened to or looked at the stats and all these things. So it's like if you bet too early, yes, technically the number is like softer, but you also have less of an idea of like, is it softer on this side or is it that side?
Right.
So I think like for the average person, there can be kind of an in between of, it's pretty much never a good idea to be betting like right before kickoff, because that is like the sharpest number, but that doesn't necessarily mean you need to be the first one to bet. So it's like, what's that sort of in between where whatever your process is, like you've gotten to that point where you're as confident as you can be, but you're not waiting literally right towards kickoff. So it could be a day before, 2 days before, 3 days before, whatever it is, that I think is helpful.
I think along those same lines, I'm curious to get your thoughts on the old adage of trust your gut, because it's step one of your book. You say, realize you know nothing.
Yeah.
Yet you always hear, and this is something that sports bettors say to each other all the time, especially after a screw up or a bad pick, is, hey, my gut told me this, and then my research told me that. Where do you land on the old adage, trust your gut?
Yeah, it's a really hard one. I would say in general in life, trust your gut. In sports betting, don't trust your gut. That's my general advice. There are the occasional exceptions, but typically I think that's kind of a Monday morning quarterback thing of, oh, my gut said this. Like, did it really? Did you track that down? Did you have an idea of why the numbers were wrong? Usually the answer is no, and you're just like, but I could have picked the other team. They won, so why didn't I do that?
Matt, I have an idea. What about you always want to track your bets. What about a gut tracker?
I do think that would be super helpful. Like if you really take that idea seriously, I would like have in your bet tracking thing, like, right, what did the numbers say? What did my gut say? And like, I do think there could be some validity to like I've noticed I do tend to, and not everyone's like this, I do tend to bet better like on the teams that I follow really closely. And I think I follow them so closely that like my gut actually may be more informed than like someone who's just looking at numbers. But I don't know that for sure, and I haven't tracked it. And if like I really want to prove that, like I need to track it, and I might just be completely full of crap.
So the general theme is have fun with it. You're probably not going to get rich. A high percentage chance says that you're not. I will say for the common sports fan, I think you actually can make money sports betting. This is the thing I constantly try and tell myself. The problem isn't so much with the picks. It's the way that you bet. I have a buddy that's a good example of this. If you're listening to this, Mike, I'm sorry, but he bets his unit size based on confidence. When it would probably be smarter to just say, I'm going to bet 5 games. They all get the same amount. Overvaluing your gut, I think, back to our original point. And then the biggest issue that is one of the biggest problems that I have, and I know that a lot of people do, is avoiding the tilt. You know, you're sitting there. Sunday is a great example of this. You lose 3 games, maybe you're down $150, and then Sunday night football rolls around and you just kind of panic. You just all you want to do is just leave the weekend without a deficit, and then you end up creating this snowball effect. How have you taught yourself to avoid the tilt?
I don't know if I've taught myself to avoid the tilt. I think if I'm tracking my bets and aware of kind of like the commandments and things that I talk about in the book, I'm a lot less likely to do it, but I've still done it. I just, again, do it a lot less often. And I really think it just comes down to that. Like if you're tracking your bets and you look at it Monday morning and you're like, oh, I lost $150 and then I bet $200 on Sunday night football, like, it's hard. It gets harder and harder to stomach if you're literally looking at that number and you're looking at it and you're like, why was I betting whatever $25 a game? And then all of a sudden I bet 200. Like that was really dumb. And just looking at it, like it just, again, gets harder and harder to delude yourself if you're literally looking at the numbers and just seeing like, man, I thought my gut was right, or I thought I wasn't tilting or whatever. This guy told me this stat about Lamar Jackson and then he lost and I was wrong. And now I'm poor.
Yeah. I learned that lesson. The Eagles Chiefs Super Bowl from 2 years ago. I decided that I always put a little extra on the Super Bowl. I bet $500, which is way more than I typically bet on a game. And I was on the Eagles. And I thought I had it all figured out.
Oh, no.
And then Patrick Mahomes says, watch this. And I write it down. And when you look at that monstrosity next to a bunch of $25 bets, you go, that's pretty ridiculous. So it's a great point that you make. Last thing here, how damaging can parlays be long term?
Parlays are an interesting one because like technically they aren't more damaging. Like the math behind a parlay is like if you had an edge, doing a parlay will actually like multiply the edge and give you more of an edge. But again, going back to like the main point of the book, you don't know as much as you think you do, and you probably never have an edge. So like how the math works is if you have a little edge, it becomes a bigger edge. If you have kind of like a negative EV thing or a non-edge, it compounds that edge. So it basically makes any bad decision you're making like exponentially worse. And if you're doing it over time, it gets worse and worse and worse. And then there's also just like the psychological part of like, you're going to lose more parlays than you would straight bets, even if you're making money on them, just because that's how the math works, right? If you have 2-to-1 odds, you need to win more than you would for plus 100. So again, psychologically, losing more is going to make it more painful. It's going to make it more likely that you tilt, et cetera, et cetera. So just in general, they're a really bad idea. And then also going back to what I was saying of like the same game parlays where like the sportsbook is promoting it, typically you're not getting fair odds on those, which again is just compounding the mistakes that you might already be making. So it's just making it worse and worse and worse.
This has been such a treat. The book is titled Smart Sports Betting, How to Shift from a Diehard Fan to a Winning Gambler. The author, Matt Rudnitsky, has been my guest today. Thanks so much, Matt, and best of luck this season, most importantly.
Thank you, Brandon, and best of luck to you and everyone listening.